Thank you.
The webcast has started. Councillor Chad.
Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to my Executive Lead Member for Children's Services Decision Day. This Decision Day is being broadcast live on YouTube via the County Council website. We only have one item on the agenda today, and I know that Councillor Kirsty North wishes to speak on this item. So the one and only item is the future of Smammel and Enham COV aided primary school. And what I'll do is I'll invite Councillor North to speak first, and then I'll ask Richard to present the report. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor North.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today regarding the future of Smammel and Enham Church of England Primary School. As the local county councillor for Andover North Division, I have represented this community for 8 years now, and this school, alongside the nearby church and pub opposite, are at the heart of village life in Smammel. I recognise, though, that pupil numbers have fallen to an unsustainably low level. I understand it's now down to 5 pupils. And my first priority continues to be the education of the remaining pupils who have been let down. Their attainment must come first, and if that means moving them to another setting, that should be facilitated with care and support. I want to thank officers throughout this process for including the wording in the formal consultation that supports families seeking to continue with faith-based education. This is an important consideration for many in our community and reflects the school's historic role as the Church of England primary school. I previously encouraged the executive member to ask the diocese to provide full details of the lengths they had gone to attract a faith multi-academy trust to take on the school. This assurance is vital to demonstrate that every possible option has been explored before closure is considered. I note that there is reference to their efforts in the report, and I understand that you may not wish to publish a list of trusts who refuse to take on the school, but I do think it is important to continue to hold their feet to the fire. I want to thank officers who have been working with the school for many years now. I know that they turn up to work to turn things around and not seek a closure. I also want to thank senior officers who took time to meet parents alongside Councillor Phil North and myself, and the continued dialogue after the meeting with ongoing individual support. It was really appreciated. I also understand Kit Malthouse MP hosted a similar meeting, which again I'm grateful for. There has been significant dialogue between parents, past and present, and one outstanding concern is the cost of new school uniforms. I recently spoke to a parent who shared how difficult this transition has been for them. After investing in a full set of branded uniform for Smammel and Enham only months ago, they now face the expense of buying another complete set for a new school: shirts, jumpers, PE kit, all at a time when household budgets are already stretched. For some families, this is not just an inconvenience, it's a real financial burden. I would encourage consideration of a discretionary payment to assist families during this transition, so that no child feels disadvantaged because of circumstances beyond their control. Looking ahead, I believe the site still has much to offer. While with further housing development planned in east of Andover, demand for primary education may rise, and I appreciate that's not in the immediate future, but it is in the medium future. Additionally, given the growing need for specialist education and the increase in education, health and care plans, I ask for an assessment of the demand for SEND provision in the area. Converting the building into a special school could be a valuable opportunity and ensure this Grade 2 listed building continues to serve its intended purpose as an educational establishment. I trust that this assessment has been carried out. I've continued to engage with the local community, and to date 50 residents have signed my campaign to keep the building open for educational use. I've had many conversations locally about the need for additional SEND provision and the way in which this could be brought forward to enable the school a new lease of life. This is a really difficult decision, but it's one that must balance immediate needs with long-term opportunities. And I hope these suggestions help shape a solution that serves both our children and our community. So I thank you, Ros, for keeping me informed throughout this process and for considering these points carefully.
Thank you, Councillor North. Richard, are you happy to present the report now, please?
Certainly, Councillor Chad, that's not a problem. And I'll pick up on some of Councillor North's points as I go through, or we can pick them up at the end. So just to remind colleagues, this is a report on the feedback of the statutory consultation phase in the relation to the future of Smanil and Enham CFE aided primary school. So it's the public notice period. The recommendation in the report recommends closure of school from the 27th of March next year. It's important for Councillor Chad to recognise that we do still have an academy order sat on the school, and we can't affect the closure until that academy order is revoked. Through Natalie and discussions with the DFE and the regional director have agreed to revoke the order once this decision is taken. So this is about an order and timing process as opposed to anything else. They weren't prepared to revoke the order until this decision day and a decision being taken at the end of it to close the school. If that's the decision that's taken, they will revoke the order, and then we can implement the closure if that's where we go on the 26th of March. So just important to note that, because it's a key point that we do need that order officially revoked before we can enact any decision. So just to remind colleagues, the governing body wrote to us on the 10th of October and asked us to consult on their future. We had an initial phase of consultation between the 13th of October and the 10th of November, and we brought that report back to a decision day on the 19th of November, which then authorised us to move into a period of statutory consultation. Smanil and Enham small primary school on the edge of Andover, usually 105 places at the school, but since an inadequate Ofsted inspection in May of 24, numbers have fallen substantially, and that has been very much, I think, the reason for the challenges the school have faced. It should be noted that we are in a period of very low primary numbers as well, so that's exacerbated the situation for the school. So not only have they had to deal with a poor Ofsted outcome, they've had to, that's all in an environment of very low primary numbers, which has made it even more challenging for the school. There's from September 25, there was only 25 pupils in the school, and that number has decreased over the last term. As Councillor North said, there were only 5 children in the school at the end of the current term. We expect there to be no children in the school from the start of the new term. Those 5 children, 4 are holding places elsewhere, and there's one local authority placed child that is needing to move for other reasons. So it's highly likely, as we sit here today, that come the start of the new term, there will be no children left in the school. They've all found places locally at schools of their choice with the support of the admissions team through in-year applications. Those wanting church school places have been able to find those as well. So it was helpful in one sense that there was local capacity, and there's local capacity across denomination as well. So there was no shortage of places, whether they were just in a community school or a faith-based school. So parents have been able to go where they want in most cases. I think over the last 18 months, the leadership have worked hard in the school. It's not that people haven't worked hard. They've worked very hard with lots of support from our inspection service, from the diocese, and other bits of children's services to support the leadership in the school and try and maintain education and standards. But the very low numbers and the challenges that brings around finance and around staffing and around leadership have been the real challenges. So even with all of that support, with the sort of turbulence that's existing in the school, the quality of education has been a concern for us over a sustained period of time now, and sort of hence the Ofsted outcome in May 24, and then some of our inspections over the last year have sort of concluded that the educational standards were not what we might have wanted or expected, but again in the context of a very difficult situation for the school. So that's worth just noting and remembering. I mean, Councillor North did mention the diocese. The diocese, the DFE and the local authority have worked hard to try and find a sponsor. It's not easy to find sponsors nowadays, more generally for schools. Academy trusts are, shall I say, very discerning about the schools they're prepared to take on. and it's very difficult to find a sponsor for a small rural school with very low numbers, forecast numbers, and a substantial deficit to boot. And so it's not for the want of trying very often, but at any one point there are many schools up and down the country who are seeking sponsors for those very same reasons. So while the diocese are and the DfE and us are sometimes, we're not prepared to say who we've spoken to because that causes other problems. I absolutely assure Councillor North that many trusts were approached through the diocese and through the DfE to see if they would be prepared to sponsor Smanal, but for the reasons I've just sort of set out, they weren't. But again, it's not, Smanal is not the exception to that problem. You know, others are in the same situation. In terms of finance, I think there's been a bit of confusion over the school's finances and the way education budgets work. They're set on a forecast based sort of pupil numbers, and therefore if you ask the school if what their budget position is currently, they would say, well, we are in credit. The reality is they are not. They've been overfunded because of forecast budgets and forecast pupil numbers that have not played out as forecast. So therefore they are in a significant deficit position in reality. But even that said, they're in a budget position that's not recoverable, and certainly wouldn't have been recoverable with only 5 children in the school. Obviously, when there are no children in the school, it's a wholly different position anyway, but their budget position would not have been recoverable with such small numbers. And there was no likelihood, given the capacity in the surrounding area, that those numbers would have increased if the school remained open. So they were in that very difficult position of continuing very low numbers, budget deficit growing, numbers not coming in to try and help them alleviate the budget problems. So I won't sort of say any more about that in terms of budget. Performance, I've touched on. There's been a lot of support going to school over recent times in order to try and support the leadership. It's very difficult when there's, you know, we reached a position in September where there were just 2 classes and 2 teachers teaching across all the key stages. And while that's possible, it's very difficult. And it's very difficult for a number of reasons, sort of expertise, leadership capacity, support, and all of those things. And while we know and accept that how hard the staff in the school have worked, it's just been a real challenge, and hence the continued support that's gone in through the various parts of children's services and the diocese around that. So, I mean, in terms of the public notice feedback, we had 7 responses to the public notice period, the consultation phase, and they're set out in the report in paras 45 to 48. I mean, generally, as we might imagine, not supportive of a position of closure for all the reasons we would understand, you know, loss of a provision within the community, taking a faith school disappearing in the community, excuse me, and the impact on that local community. I think we are in a position where there's been sufficient local school places, which is positive. We are, and I'll touch on it in a minute, in terms of the school site, I think it's important that we understand the site is not wholly in the county council's ownership. We own the playing field, so not an uncommon position, and the diocese are responsible for the school and the school buildings, and there is a deed of trust in relation to the school and school buildings. But to assure Councillor North that we are talking to and will continue to talk to the diocese about any opportunities that exist around the future of the school and the school buildings and site for further educational use. I can't commit to anything more than that at this point, because it requires the diocese to do their due diligence around the deed of trust and what that means once the school, or should the school be closed, and what options are there for its continued use going forward. But we will work with the diocese to see what possibilities exist around that. But it's just important to understand that it's not directly within our gift to say that the site can be used for A or B. It's much more in the diocese's gift, actually, and the deed of trust in relation to the site and the school buildings particularly. Just worth noting that Smanal is considered a rural school, so there are other considerations we have to think about before we move to a point of closure in terms of rural schools, and we've done that. And that's about impacts on the community, denominational effect, etc., etc. So that's all been done. In terms of admissions, if there are no children left in the school, admissions do not become a problem for us as we move forward. But the admissions teams have been supporting parents to find alternate places locally. And as I said, if we're down to no pupils for the start of the new term, clearly that has been an effective process, and parents have been able to get, hopefully in most cases, the school of their preferred choice. So we will, if there is an issue next term and anyone needs further admission support, that will be there and available for them. School site I've touched on, we'll work with the diocese over that. Transport, there are no issues or implications around transport. If any arise, they will be just picked up through policy and through the school transport team. In terms of personnel, education, people services, they've changed their name from education personnel services, will continue to support the staff during the next phase of this process if it is one of closure, and look to support those staff into alternate provision if that's what they wish. That work has already started because of notice periods and the like. We have to run a dual process when we look at school closures to make sure that if we do reach a point of closure, the support is already in place for those staff that are impacted by it because of notice periods, etc. So we can't simply wait around the personnel aspects of a school closure until a final decision is taken, because if we did that, we wouldn't have sufficient time in order to work with staff to support them to move on. So that work at risk starts at an earlier period in time. So I think from me, Councillor Chad, that's most probably the nuts and bolts of the report. The recommendation does remain one for closure as of the end of March 2026. As I said, we think there are no children in the school from the start of the new term, but we'll ensure that if there is, support continues, and we'll ensure support continues for the staff up until such time closure is reached. And finally, just to say, we will confirm that the DfE, if that's where we move to, have revoked the academy order to enable the closure if that's the decision to be enacted when it needs to be enacted.
Thank you, Rich, for the report. I just actually have one question, if that's possible. I think we've lived and breathed this for for the last since October time, September, October time. So I feel really well briefed on it anyway. But in regards to the children, if there's no children in the school at the start of the term, and we've got the closure date of March 2026, is there the likelihood that that closure will happen beforehand? I guess I'm asking if I need to amend the recommendation.
Fair and reasonable question. A couple of things on that. We obviously need to do the piece of work, the DfE, to sort the revocation order out, and it's a question that we considered and asked, particularly of education, people services, EPS, around bringing the closure date forward if there were no children in the school. And the reality is the personnel process will take a period of time anyway, so there is no material benefit in changing that date for us. So actually, that's why we left it in the report as at the end of March, and instead of suggesting something earlier. There's no material benefit in bringing it forward.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else have any questions or comments before I proceed to the... No? Okay. As I said, we've lived and breathed this for many months now, and we've had continuous updates on how the children are doing, the impact on their education, with the numbers. We're fully aware that there is a low birth rate nationally at the moment, and that continues to on a downward trend at this present time. This decision, a decision like this, is not taken lightly, and it follows a lengthy process, as we've explained, of consultations and tireless works by our council officers, the Diocese of Winchester, and the Department of Education and the staff in the school. They've all done this work to support the school and explore alternative options for its future, and I'm grateful for their continued efforts and wish to express my disappointment that despite this, the school's closure is now looking like it's regrettably the only viable way forward. I know that this will be met with great sadness in the local community, and I would really, really like to thank those who have taken part in our consultations and to assure everyone that I have fully reviewed their feedback numerous times. It has been essential to consider this alongside the school's many wider complex challenges, which unfortunately leave us with no other suitable long-term solution. Going forward, we will work, I know it's been mentioned that we will work closely with the affected staff and any remaining families, taking every step to manage the process as smoothly as possible. As part of this, what I would like to offer to support families, including those that have moved their children to new schools since September, with a contribution towards the cost of replacing the school uniform, as Councillor North has requested, and we would be very happy to offer that contribution in replacing the school uniform. As a parent myself, and I know Councillor North is as well, I think we can both acknowledge that this is a really costly process for parents, and I hope that this offer will go some way of supporting families with a transition. That does bring me to the recommendations, and I think from that speech you can see where my head is with the decision. The recommendation is that the approval is given under Section 15 of the Education and Inspections Act 2006 for the closure of Snammell and Elm C of E aided primary school with effect from the 27th of March 2026, subject obviously to the Secretary of State revoking the Academy order. I'm not happy, but I am approving that recommendation that we go for the school closure for March 2026. Again, I'd like to thank everyone during this time, especially the children. Actually, I think they've shown such resilience in regards to starting new schools and continuing with their education, and those last few children that are left that we will know by the beginning of term, I would really appreciate an update on those children once they're settled in their new school, and I'm sure Councillor North would appreciate that update as well to be passed on to her. So thank you everybody for today. That brings us to the end of the meeting, and can we please end the webcast?
I'll confirm as soon as it's